Good afternoon. Bon après-midi tout le monde. I'm grateful to be joining you from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As the world continues to watch painfully and with growing alarm the shroud of terrorism spread in Afghanistan, Canada is carefully, expeditiously, and effectively carrying out a special resettlement operation to evacuate Afghan nationals who, for years, provided critical support to the Canadian mission in that country. Tous les jours, nous voyons les Taliban continuer à prendre les capitales provinciales. En ces moments difficiles, nous voulons soutenir les nombreux Afghans qui craignent pour l'avenir si les Taliban prennent le contrôle total du pays. Right now, our teams in Afghanistan are working around the clock alongside our allies and in close cooperation with our team here in Canada and around the world to evacuate as many as possible. The challenges are stark, as it is an extremely complex and volatile environment. A little over a week ago, I had the privilege of welcoming the very first of those Afghan refugees alongside my colleague, Minister Monsef, and as we have described it on numerous occasions, it was a very emotional moment. But it was the beginning of this operation and not the end, and today we are continuing with it. That initial moment brought a sense of hope, a feeling of optimism, and a sigh of relief for those families who are now starting a new life in Canada. The families, the toddlers, and even the newborns will no longer have to live the daily nightmare of being under the thumb of the Taliban, and one could not help but be moved. As I've said, Canada will do right by those who did right by us. And today, I'm here to say that we will do more. As the Taliban continues to take over more of Afghanistan, many more Afghans' lives are now under increasing threat, and many have already fled. Those refugees face an uncertain and volatile future in neighboring countries, and Canada is here to help them as well. In an initial effort to alleviate the emerging humanitarian crisis in the region, Canada will build on our earlier special immigration program to welcome over 20,000 vulnerable Afghan refugees in total. Our efforts will focus on those who are particularly vulnerable, including women leaders, human rights defenders, journalists, persecuted religious minorities, LGBTQI individuals, and family members of previously resettled interpreters. They will come through our family class sponsorship, as well as through our government-assisted refugee and privately sponsored refugee programs. Je suis fier d'annoncer que le Canada accueillera un total de 20 000 réfugiés afghans. Nos efforts se concentreront sur les personnes particulièrement vulnérables, notamment les femmes dirigeantes, les défenseurs des droits de l'homme, les journalistes, les minorités religieuses persécutées, les personnes LGBTQI et les membres de la famille des interprètes précédemment réinstallés. I also know that the Sikh community here in Canada looks forward to welcoming targeted minorities, including Afghan Sikhs and Hindus, with newcomers and with open arms. And I know that my colleague, Minister Sajjan, will have more to say on this specific subject. Thanks to their support, we have already been able to resettle a number of families, and a part of this update, we will be resettling more. This new program will welcome government-supported and privately sponsored refugees, along with those sponsored by family already in Canada. By welcoming these Afghan refugees, we'll help to ease some of the burden that Afghanistan's neighbors are currently shouldering and offer refugees a permanent home in Canada. This effort will complement Canada's special immigration program for Afghans who contributed to our mission in Afghanistan. Unlike that program, which focused on those who supported Canada's efforts in Afghanistan, this new effort, which we are announcing today, will encompass a broader humanitarian pathway. We will draw on the lessons we've learned through many previous refugee operations successfully, and will be engaging with our international and domestic partners, settlement service provider organizations, and private sponsors to develop a plan on moving forward. Toutes les personnes qui arrivent devront, bien entendu, satisfaire aux exigences du Canada en matière d'admissibilité, de sécurité et d'examens médicaux. Toutes les exigences en matière de quarantaine et des tests visant à protéger la santé et la sécurité des personnes présentes au Canada seront également respectées. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Ministers Sajjan, Garneau, and Monsef, all of the staff at my department, Global Affairs Canada, the Department of National Defence, Public Health Agency of Canada, the Canada Border Services Agency, and of course the Canadian Armed Forces, all of whom are performing in exceedingly difficult circumstances, but to an exemplary standard. J'aimerais également remercier les nombreux députés que nous avons entendus au cours des dernières semaines et les associations qui ont aidé les fonctionnaires à dresser la liste des personnes qui nous ont soutenus en Afghanistan. Over the past few weeks, we've seen an outpouring of goodwill from Canadians across the country who are eager to open their homes and their hearts, and their enthusiastic support will continue to guide our efforts as we welcome more and more Afghanistan refugees to safety in this country. I want to say, in conclusion, that I'm grateful to have the opportunity to make this important announcement alongside my colleagues, and I will now turn it back to you, Alex. Merci.
Thank you, Minister. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. On passe par la parole maintenant à l'honorable Harjit Sajjan, Ministre de la Défense nationale. We will now pass things over to the Honorable Harjit Sajjan, Minister of National Defense. Allez-y, Monsieur le Ministre. Go ahead, Minister.
Good afternoon. Bonjour à tous. I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Before I discuss our efforts to bring Afghan nationals to safety in Canada, I would like to provide a brief update on the Canadian Armed Forces opportunity pertaining to Afghanistan. Now, we've been closely monitoring the evolving situation in Afghanistan on a continuous basis. Our Canadian Armed Forces personnel have been on the ground for some time now, and we're working across government, including with Global Affairs Canada, to develop contingency plans for a range of scenarios. Now, for obvious security reasons, I cannot provide details about any possible operational support, but we will continue to provide updates as they become available. But I want to reiterate that the security of the Canadian Embassy and the safety of our personnel in Kabul is our top priority, and we have been working on this for some time. Over the past weeks, much like the rest of the world, Canadians have been watching what has been happening in Afghanistan. Concern for the people who have worked to build a more equal and prosperous country for Afghans. Our government shares those concerns, and we are taking real action to resettle the brave Afghans who are instrumental to our mission in Afghanistan. Over the past weeks, our departments have been working quickly to evacuate those individuals and their families who are at significant risk because of their support to Canada and our allies. National Defence has been helping Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada to identify and vet eligible applicants. Since receiving the official request for federal assistance on July 30th, the Canadian Armed Forces have been providing dedicated airlift support and personnel under Operation Aegis. The Royal Canadian Air Force began flight operations with our C-17 Globemasters from 429 Tactical Squadron that brought the first Afghan evacuees safely to Canada. And IRCC officials welcomed them at the Toronto Pearson International Airport at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, August 4th, with Minister Mendicino and Monsef there. On August 8th, a combination of military and contracted flights brought additional Afghan refugees to safety. Another contracted aircraft arrived in Toronto on August 11th. I can also share with you that another military flight of Afghan refugees arrived in Canada just a few hours ago. And our work to resettle the Afghan interpreters and local staff who assisted Canada's mission will continue in the coming days and weeks. The defense team remains ready to support the whole of government effort to get these Afghan nationals out of harm's way. The Canadian Armed Forces will provide additional flights as required, and DND will continue to support the vetting process and advise on contingency plans for a range of scenarios as our government monitors the evolving security situation in Afghanistan. In addition to those individuals who supported the Canadian mission in Afghanistan, we know that there are many other Afghans who need our help, including those who have fled Afghanistan and remain outside of the country. This includes the many thousands of Afghans who worked with media, civil society, and non-governmental organizations, dedicating their lives to making their country and the world a better place. And as my colleague, Minister Mendicino, has indicated, Canada will introduce a special program focusing on helping Afghans at the highest risk, threatened by the Taliban and forced to flee Afghanistan. Now, Canada will welcome 20,000 vulnerable Afghans, including women leaders, human rights defenders, journalists, persecuted religious minorities, LGBTQI individuals, and family members of previously resettled interpreters. And some of these refugees will be directly supported by the Government of Canada, while others will be privately sponsored. And as usual, Canadians have shown an incredible desire to open their hearts and minds to help those in need. And we are deeply grateful for the support shown by Canadians across the country. And in particular, I want to thank the Manmeet Singh Bhullar Foundation for their leadership. The federal government has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Manmeet Singh Bhullar Foundation to resettle a group of vulnerable Afghan, Sikh, and Hindu families who are currently outside of Afghanistan. Over the next several months, we will expand this program through a partnership with the foundation and community sponsors in Canada in order to resettle several hundred remaining Sikh and Hindu persons who have fled Afghanistan. And this builds on our collaboration with the foundation that has already successfully resettled more than 20 families and helped them start their new lives in Canada. And this type of community involvement plays a key role in helping newcomers to successfully integrate, and our government welcomes the assistance of any groups or individual Canadians who wish to help. Canada has a well-earned reputation of being a place where the most vulnerable can find refuge. And we will not shy away from our responsibility to help Afghans, those who courageously aided Canada's effort in Afghanistan, and those who have fled the country. To all those who are at risk, including the religious minorities ruthlessly targeted by the Taliban, know that we stand with you, and Canada is here to help. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. On passera la parole maintenant à l'honorable Marc Garneau, Ministre des Affaires étrangères. We will now go to the Honorable Marc Garneau, Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Minister is joining us by phone. So now, operator, you can please open the line. Operateur.
Thank you and good afternoon. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, I am following the situation in Afghanistan very carefully. I was in touch with Ambassador Sirs this morning, as well as our allies over the past days. The situation is troubling. As we watch the situation unfold, I can't help but think of the sacrifices Canadians, including our armed forces, diplomats, and civilians, have made to secure the future of a nation and its people over so many years. We went there because we believe in the people of Afghanistan, and we believe in their future. That resolve has not changed and will not change, which is why work continues at this very moment on the ground in Afghanistan. Our diplomats, soldiers, and government officials are doing everything they can to help people who were instrumental to our efforts on behalf of the Afghan people. I thank Ministers Sajjan and Mendicino, as well as all government officials, for their ongoing commitment to the priority processing under the Special Immigration Measures program that we have put in place for Afghans. Au cours des 20 dernières années, ces personnes ont risqué leur vie pour aider le Canada à soutenir les Afghans dans la réalisation de gains importants en matière de démocratie, de droits de la personne, d'éducation, de santé et de sécurité. Nous avons une dette envers eux et nous continuerons à faire tout en notre pouvoir tant que ce sera possible. Cela comprend la planification de chaque éventualité y compris l'évolution rapide de la situation de sécurité très précaire sur le terrain. Ce faisant, la protection de l'ambassade du Canada et de notre personnel à Kaboul est notre priorité absolue. Je resterai en contact permanent avec mes collègues, nos représentants et notre ambassadeur. Ils peuvent compter sur mon attention et ma coopération entière. Le Canada demeure engagé à l'égard de l'Afghanistan, de la population afghane et sa sécurité et de la santé et sécurité de chaque Canadien. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le ministre. Thank you, Minister. On passera maintenant à notre dernier invité. We'll now go to our final speaker, l'honorable Maryam Monsef, ministre des Conditions féminines. And we'll now go to our final speaker, Minister Maryam Monsef, Minister of Women and Gender Equality. Go ahead, Minister. À vous, Madame la Ministre.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour, Anin. Salam alaikum. I join you from my home in Peterborough, Kawartha on Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory. I'd like to begin by thanking the Prime Minister and my colleagues, as well as their teams, for their tireless efforts, particularly over the past few weeks and months, as the situation in Afghanistan has continued to deteriorate. The work and the settlement effort introduced today is going to make a world of difference. Canada's always been a friend of Afghanistan. We are a top donor to Afghanistan, and my honorable colleague, Minister Gould, announced $270 million to support the work underway just last November. Canadian families have given 158 lives to ensure the progress of people in Afghanistan, and investments from various governments have made great progress in Afghanistan. Progress in maternal mortality, progress with the education of girls and boys, progress with infrastructure, with advancing women's rights. In fact, Afghanistan has more women elected, more women representatives than most other countries, including here in Canada. And as we have watched the situation unfold, hearts are breaking here in Canada and around the world as we are afraid of all that hard-won progress being turned back. The announcement today is just one of the many ways that Canada continues to stand with the people of Afghanistan. We've been in conversation with ambassadors, with politicians, with experts, with veterans, with civil society organizations, with parliamentarians in Afghanistan, and we will continue to stay connected with them. They have told us of the atrocities that are taking place that disproportionately harm women, children, widows, LGBTQI folks, as well as those who have worked to advance any of the progress made over the past 2 decades. I also want to acknowledge that in every Afghan household in Canada and around the world, folks are being triggered by the trauma that they endured years ago. So if you have Afghan friends, please pick up the phone and call them, check in on them, because particularly if they're activists and advocates, they're hurting right now, and that solidarity and support will mean a world of difference. I would encourage Canadians watching to do the same with veterans and families of fallen soldiers who are also being triggered. They fought a good fight, an important fight, and a lot of progress was made, and they need to hear from us, from their communities, that we stand with them. My heart breaks for the people of Afghanistan, for the widow who's recently lost her husband, and now she's being told by the Taliban that she can't work. How is she gonna afford to keep those kids safe and keep herself safe? My heart breaks for the families who are having Taliban knock on their doors and say, we're taking your 12-year-old daughters as sex slaves for our soldiers. And my heart breaks for every activist, including ones I've been speaking to lately, who are seeing the work that they've poured their heart and soul into over the past several decades be at such risk. But I'm also hopeful. I'm hopeful because Canada is stepping up as we always have. And we're opening our doors to those who need us most, just as we did with Vietnam, just as we did with Syria. And those Afghans who are going to be landing on Canadian soil will give back 100-fold the kindness that they receive. I'm hopeful because multilateral bodies and organizations exist and everyone's seized with this issue and wants to make a difference, particularly around women, peace, and security. And I'm hopeful too, because I've seen how Canadians welcome those who come to them with nowhere else to go. And somehow that effort brings out the best in all of us. با عزیزای افغان که دلا شما خونه بفهمین که تنها نیستین، ما پشت شما هستیم، ما غم شما رو درک میکنیم و دولت کانادا شما رو تنها نمیگذاره. مواظب خوب باشین. To Afghans watching this, know that the government of Canada is doing whatever it can to help, and we recognize how difficult this time of sorrow and loss is for all of you. We will do everything we can to do our part. Thanks again, and I'll hand it back over to you.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thank you, Minister. On passera maintenant à la conférence de presse. We will now begin the press conference portion of the event. As usual, one question, one follow-up. And as I am the only one in the room today, they will all be on the telephone. Toutes les questions seront au téléphone. Une question, une suivi. Et on allera maintenant au téléphone pour notre première question. Operateur, we will now go to the first question on the phone. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. There will be a brief pause while the participants register for questions. Il y aura un court délai vous permettant de vous enregistrer dans la file d'attente pour la période de questions. Thank you for your patience. Merci de patienter. La première question est de, the first question is from Christian Noël, Radio-Canada. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, messieurs, mesdames les ministres. Pouvez-vous nous donner plus de détails sur ces 20 000 réfugiés que vous voulez accueillir? D'abord, à quel moment vous allez commencer? Comment vous allez les rapatrier? Quelle est l'échéance que vous vous donnez? Et surtout, est-ce que ça touche seulement ceux qui ont déjà quitté le pays, qui sont dans des pays voisins, ou ça touche quand même encore des gens qui sont encore en Afghanistan, dans des régions où la sécurité est menacée?
Je prends cette question. Il y a plusieurs questions là, mais tout d'abord, je veux dire que le Canada continuait de démontrer le leadership dans cette opération. Et il y a un focus de continuer d'avancer le but de réinstaller les Afghans qui sont éligibles sous les mesures spéciales que nous avons vient d'annoncer à la fin de juillet. C'est une opération qui continuait même maintenant. Les vols, il y a quelques vols qui a déjà arrivé avec des réfugiés. Je sais que il y a des questions sur les détails de l'initiative que nous avons annoncée aujourd'hui. Je vais souligner encore que ce programme avait un focus sur quelques catégories des personnes, les femmes dirigées, les petites femmes, les minoritaires qui sont le target de les Taliban, même les journalistes, les activistes dans l'espace de les droits des personnes et même des fonctionnaires qui travaillent dans l'espace de les NGO, par exemple avec le NU. Donc, il y a deux focus. Premièrement, sur l'opération que nous sommes en train d'accomplir pour les Afghans qui avaient soutenu la mission canadienne en Afghanistan pendant des années. Et maintenant, une initiative qui avait un focus de compassion sur les mérites des humanitaires pour les réfugiés. Et on va commencer maintenant, parce qu'il y a des parcours qui existent maintenant dans le contexte de notre plan d'immigration et avec des parcours qui sont là, on peut commencer de réinstaller des réfugiés qui viennent d'Afghanistan.
Suivi, Christian?
Écoutez, je me rends compte qu'il y a beaucoup de questions dans ma question qui demeurent sans réponse, donc je donne la chance d'y revenir, notamment sur les pays voisins ou des gens qui sont encore en Afghanistan. Mais là, j'aimerais vous parler notamment des interprètes afghans qui sont en fuite, qui doivent se cacher présentement des talibans. Leur vie est en danger. Ils sont parfois dans des zones où c'est impossible d'y avoir accès. Et là, il y a des ex-militaires qui, présentement, vous accusent de les avoir laissés tomber, de ne pas avoir agi assez rapidement, d'avoir été pris par surprise par l'avancée rapide des talibans. Vous leur répondez quoi à ces gens qui craignent pour la vie de leurs anciens collègues?
Écoute, comme j'avais déjà dit, on va continuer avec le programme spécial que nous avons déjà annoncé il y a presque 2 semaines. Les vols continuent, l'opération continue avec la coopération de mes collègues, les ministres Garneau et Sajjan. Les membres de la force continuaient d'évacuer les réfugiés pour le temps qui est possible. Et sur votre dernière question, juste un petit précise, oui, avec cette annonce aujourd'hui, les réfugiés qui sont déjà déplacés, qui avaient quitté l'Afghanistan, allaient pays des voisins dans les régions, avaient une opportunité pour soumettre une application dans le contexte de l'annonce aujourd'hui. Et encore, le focus est sur les réfugiés, des femmes, des petites filles, des minoritaires qui sont le target de la Taliban, les journalistes, les activistes qui travaillent dans l'espace de droits de personnes. Donc oui, il y a un parcours pour les réfugiés qui ont déjà quitté l'Afghanistan.
And just to make sure that we're totally clear, the announcement today is for people that have already left Afghanistan, period.
Oui, et qui sont en train de quitter Afghanistan.
Merci.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from la prochaine question est de Libertium de Canadian Press.
Minister Garneau, you could respond to reports that the Canadian embassy is currently closed and no longer reaching out to Afghans, and that staff are preparing to evacuate. And I'd also like, even if the embassy is still open, how are you going to circumvent passport requirements? And actually, that's emerged as a huge issue and challenge here, and actually get people out.
Thank you, Lee, for the question. Let me say this. Our diplomats, officials, and military personnel on the ground are doing everything they can. We continue, obviously, to monitor the security situation very closely. For operational security reasons, you'll understand that I can't go into it. We've said that. We are prepared for a variety of contingencies, but always bearing in mind our duty of care for the safety of Canadians. We have a responsibility in that respect, and we'll keep you informed when appropriate. And with respect to the passport situation, we are in discussions with the Afghan government to see if we can expedite or find an alternative process in order to get that part of the process done as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And to Ministers Mendicino and Minister Sajjan, you spoke about having a partnership with the Sikh community. We've been hearing from the veterans community that essentially immigration officials have basically cut out, and global affairs officials have essentially cut out the veterans community, those who have contact with the former interpreters and other former comrades on the ground. Why have you not engage those groups and to try to expedite this? And what do you say to those who say this announcement today is too little, too late, that the clock has run out and we are going to leave thousands of people who helped Canada at the hands of the Taliban?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that Canada has always shown leadership when it comes to responding to the humanitarian crises, the likes of which we are seeing in Afghanistan. We're showing tangible leadership by launching an operation that is helping us to resettle those Afghans who supported the Canadian mission for a number of years. And that operation is being carried out in extremely difficult circumstances. And I would point out, as we have said in the past, that there are material differences between our capacity to carry out this operation than where we were 10 years ago. Canada withdrew its military presence from Afghanistan, but notwithstanding that fact, with the cooperation of my colleague, Minister Sajjan, as well as the armed forces, they're now back and they're on the ground and they are serving with valor. And we should, express our gratitude to them because their performance is allowing us to resettle Afghans even now. And there have been a number of flights that have come, and there are more coming. And I think it's very important to simply underline, and Canadians should be united behind that work. On that note, I would express my gratitude to not only the veterans who have stepped up and who are reaching out to their former colleagues and friends in Afghanistan to gather information to support them, but the Afghan Canadian diaspora. We had the opportunity to meet with a number of leaders, thanks to my colleague, Minister Monsef, and the many Canadians who are outpouring support to do right, not only by those Afghans who supported us, but more broadly for the Afghans that are being deliberately targeted by the Taliban. And we should make it abundantly clear that the actions of the Taliban here are to be condemned in the strongest terms. The way in which they are carrying out indiscriminate killings of women, of young girls, of those who are active in the human rights space, the journalists who have been reporting about the facts that are going on in the ground, is the very reason why we're showing leadership today by both continuing on with our special immigration program, as well as by now introducing, to my knowledge, among the very first humanitarian resettlement pathways that will allow Afghan refugees who've already exited Afghanistan to be resettled in Canada. That's the work that I know that Canadians want us to do, and that's why we've made this announcement today.
And Lee, if I can just add to that, as you stated with the various veterans groups, one thing I can assure you, the Canadian Armed Forces leadership, the planning teams have been working around the clock, literally 24/7 on this, since we've been monitoring the security situation, but also working with the various veterans groups. The flights that you saw to come here on August 4th and the further flights that you have seen is a result of that collaborative work that has been done with the veterans groups to making sure that we have all the names, that the vetting process can actually take place. We also know that some of the vetting, some of the people who actually knew the Afghan interpreters or people who worked with us, some of them have retired, but contacting them to get that verification. So this has been a collaborative effort to making sure that we get this done. And we have moved actually quite expeditiously on those flights. And those flights continue right now. This is very personal, not only to the veterans, but also the current members of the Canadian Armed Forces, very personal to me as well, and the other ministers who you see here. We will not rest until we get everybody out, but we have to be cognizant of the security situation on the ground. We cannot compromise the security of our Canadians. We cannot compromise the security and safety of the people that we're trying to help as well.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question. The next question is from Ian Bailey from Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Question to Minister Sajjan. Minister, what can you tell us about the challenges on the ground in Afghanistan, the challenges troops are facing as they sort of work on these matters? And also, are you able to comment on what can you tell us about reports that special forces have been sent into Afghanistan?
Obviously, the challenges on the ground are quite immense. The security situation that's deteriorating is making it quite difficult. But this is something that the Canadian Armed Forces, our personnel, are very used to. They've been on the ground in Afghanistan. They've been in combat there. They know the situation, and so they're overcoming these challenges. This is one of the reasons why we've been able to move some of the Afghans out very quickly and keep flights going. But this is also a part of the great relationship that we have with our allies. We haven't had a military footprint in the country since 2014. And so because of our relationship, we were able to work closely with our allies, get the appropriate ramp space, get that coordination done to get this done. And to your question regarding Special Forces, yes, the Special Forces are involved with this, but for obvious security reasons, I can't provide any details because this is an ongoing operation. And I want to make sure that we get as many Afghans out as possible. Thank you.
Follow-up question. What is the status of the embassy? And also, when will the last of the 20,000 be out of Afghanistan or out of those regions? When will those 20,000 folks be in Canada?
Well, perhaps I can answer the first part of the question concerning the embassy. As you know, we have a responsibility for the duty of care of embassy staff, and that includes, by the way, Canadian officials, but also locally engaged staff, and that is uppermost on our mind. It is something that we're monitoring very closely at this time. This is something that we have to be prepared to act quickly on, and so we're obviously looking at all the possible contingencies with respect to any decisions with respect to embassy staff, and that is going to be the way we continue to do things on an ongoing basis as the situation changes, and we will keep you informed on developments when appropriate.
And with regards to the latter part of your question, Ian, I understand that there is a desire to know how long it will take to carry out this operation. My simple response to you is that we're going to continue to resettle as many Afghan refugees that qualify under our initial special immigration program or this broader humanitarian initiative, which again, as I clarified earlier, does allow for Afghan refugees to be resettled out of neighboring countries surrounding Afghanistan as quickly as possible. We know the situation is dire. It's getting worse by the hour. Colleagues and I have continued to get reports. We are responding as quickly, as decisively, and as effectively as we can to resettle those Afghan refugees.
Thanks, Ian. On passera maintenant aux prochaines questions. We will now go to the next question. Opérateur, opératrice.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Jordan Gowling from CTV News. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
This is probably for Minister Garneau and Minister Mendicino. There's a report out that the U.S. administration has been holding secret talks with third countries to secure deals to temporarily house at-risk Afghan refugees. Has Canada held similar talks to establish a base of operations in a third country, given that the Kabul embassy is being evacuated?
So, Minister Mendicino, over to you, if you wish.
Thank you, Marc. What I will say is that we are confident that we were able to stand up this humanitarian resettlement pathway, which will allow us to welcome 20,000 Afghan refugees, thanks in part to the very strong international presence and network of partnerships that we have in that region, including actors like the UN and IOM, as well as contacts with a number of neighboring countries. We have some presence within the neighboring region, and as a result of that, we will be able to process the applications as they come in, work closely with partners to ensure that those Afghan refugees are able to be resettled to Canada. And that work continues. And again, it's another way in which Canada is showing leadership in the humanitarian space. By standing up this program, we are responding directly to the growing humanitarian crisis which is unfolding in Afghanistan. And we're also going to do it with the support of civil society here in Canada. We've heard from a number of settlement service organizations who have put their hand up very admirably to say that once those Afghan refugees have arrived, that they are prepared to do the work of welcoming them and integrating them into our community. And I'll just point out that this is another opportunity for Canada to show leadership by welcoming these Afghan refugees. And I'm confident that not only when they get here, they will be welcomed, but they will continue to give back, as we've seen refugees do throughout the pandemic in Canada.
Follow-up?
And just a follow-up, many veterans we have talked to say that your government should have moved faster on this resettlement program. I guess for Minister Sajjan and Minister Mendicino, what's your response to that?
Well, Harj, I can take the first. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I'll just to answer your question very directly. That we have been working from day one, monitoring the situation, working very closely with our allies, and in fact, we were able to actually move very quickly. And the reason we were able to do this is because of the collaboration with the various veterans groups and the networks that they had. This allowed us to actually move and get people out faster because of the vetting process that we did with IRCC and the system that we had in place. Plus, we're leveraging our experience from when we settled Syrian refugees as well. Plus our experience on the ground, plus our relationship with our allies allowed us to move very quickly. And I've been in touch with many of the veterans groups on this on a regular basis to keep them updated, but also they're very well aware of the security situation based on that they serve there, but they also know that we are moving very quickly on this as the situation changes on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would just add very briefly that we share the sense of urgency. We are completely grasped with the gravity of the situation on the ground in Afghanistan. And the members of our armed forces who have been dispatched to carry out the operation related to the Special Immigration Measures Program are performing admirably. We are also confident that we're going to be able to do more under this new humanitarian resettlement pathway, which we've introduced today as a concrete demonstration of Canada's leadership in the human rights space in the face of this humanitarian crisis. And we're going to do that work in conjunction with veterans. As Minister Sajjan pointed out, we continue to have a dialogue with many of the advocacy groups who have offered support. Their information has been helpful. We continue to remain open to having those conversations because we are all united in the cause of trying to help as many Afghans as we possibly can. And that is the overwhelming sentiment that I get for Canadians, is that they want government to work together. They want civil society to work together as we have done in the past. That has been the hallmark of our success in the past, and it will be here too.
Thank you, Minister. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. On passera maintenant au téléphone pour la prochaine question. We'll now go to the phone for our next question. Operator, operatrice.
Thank you. Merci. Il n'y a plus de questions pour le moment. There is no more questions at this time. À vous la parole.
Okay, thank you very much. With no questions, this now concludes our press conference. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Bon week-end tout le monde. Have a great weekend, everyone. Merci. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you.